Welcome back to the Life of Freedom YouTube channel. My name is Salvador Briggman, and today's going to be a long-form podcast episode. So I want to go really in-depth into one of my coaching blogging students. So basically, this student, they decided they want to set up their own blog. They want to someday turn this into their full-time income, and I want to share with you some of the results that they've been seeing thus far from us working together. You know, I think that when it comes to blogging, it's really hard to buy into the fact that you could actually do this for a living. I think it's hard to accept that you could actually get lots and lots of traffic to your blog if you tried, particularly if you've just published a blog and maybe saw a little bit of traffic and then it gets kind of depressing because no one's visiting it. I think that today's episode is going to enlighten you, if you will, in a very effective way. You can build up an audience over time. You don't have to put any work into it after the fact. And also that you can receive what I call passive traffic. You can get traffic recurringly visiting your blog, people checking out your blog without you even spending a dime of your own money. Well, this is kind of the same thing, the same strategy that I employed for my own work. Because when I started my blog back in 2012, I was a lowly economics student. I had no money to my name. I was eating dollar pizza at 7-Eleven. I was chomping down ramen. I really had no money to my name. And I had to figure out really innovative ways to go out there and to actually get traffic for free. How to go out there and how to get people interested in my work, and how to have that be a recurring source of traffic for my blog. And I didn't have any money to spend, so I couldn't use advertisements or something like that. So I actually developed a system that will show you how to do this. And one of my students went through this system, and now they're reaping the rewards and seeing the benefits. So I urge you to stay until the end of this show. But if you have to bounce at any point in time, I invite you to subscribe to this podcast. I also have a link down below which will link you to a book that I've published on blogging, as well as I'll link you to another free course that will take you through how to set up a blog yourself and how to do it effectively, how to do it efficiently, how to do it without wasting a lot of money. So I'll link you to those two resources down below. But without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode. Hey guys, I'm really excited to be talking with an entrepreneur and now a blogger, an expert in the crowdfunding sphere. And basically, so Tom first came onto my show way back when he released the CNC router. And he created this with his co-founder right out of college. They raised $80K on Kickstarter. After that, they did another over $390,000 raise on Kickstarter. And they've been incredibly transparent with the Maslow CNC project and the Makesmith CNC project, talking about their findings and such. And Tom sort of reached out to me saying that he's also wanted to help other people in the crowdfunding sphere, other people in that field. And sort of as we've been having these different discussions, we became friends. And one of the things he's watched, I think, with me and my content is actually growing a blog from nothing to now what's one of the top ones in my field. So I was talking with him. He's like, hey, man, it'd be awesome if you could share with me some of these tips, some of these things that you're doing behind the scenes. And so we made this goal for him to start this new blog and to not only show him how to do that, but also what it looks like behind the scenes, how you get traffic, how you turn that into recurring traffic, and eventually down the road, how you can actually earn passive income and revenue with that. And that's one of the things I'm really passionate about, is just being transparent. So I had him here today because I want him to share directly with you the results he's been seeing, what it's been like, all that kind of stuff. So Tom, welcome to the show.
Good to be back.
Cool, man. You've been having a wild ride. We were first talking about the project. I know you were sort of thinking about, okay, what is it that I want to start a blog on? I'd love to ask you, when you were starting to see this, what was the actual urge there? Did you want to share your voice with the world? Did you want to start making passive income? Did you just want to get better at writing? Why is it that you want to work on the project?
I think just over time, I guess more so the passive income. But I was reading your other emails when you were kind of starting up the blogging aspect of your business, and I don't know. It seemed like you were getting started with it, with coaching people, and I was kind of paying attention to it. And I didn't particularly have a topic I wanted to write on, but I wanted to try, just see how it worked. And it seemed like the timing was good. So that's when I reached out to you, and I think it was the beginning of this year. And I was like, okay, I've been been thinking about it for a while. I don't know exactly what I want to write, but I want to try my hand at a blog just to see how it works and, see the potential for myself.
Yeah, I'm a noob in the blog coaching business. But basically, like, yeah,
No.
I put out that one book. Well, I had a lot of knowledge, but I just haven't really put it out. I put out that one book, blogging for beginners, and then I started with the online training. And it's been, my goal to try and get that out to more and more people. But I'm kind of curious here. So you basically, you didn't have an idea of what you wanted to write on, but I imagine you've seen like other bloggers out there. Like, have you seen other people earning an income from this, or was I pretty much like the only reference point there?
The only tangible connection of someone who was saying that they were doing it and successfully doing it. And so, I don't know, I'm a little, I feel like a little jaded from seeing all these people online that say, how they're pulling off these passive income strategies and how it's kind of sustaining their lifestyle. But it's another thing when you know someone over a period of time and you know that you're not kind of full of it, like you've figured it out.
There's a lot of BS out there.
Yeah, there's tons of it. So it was exciting to see someone I knew who was succeeding at it, and I figured I could learn from that.
Yeah, definitely very true. So we narrowed it down. We had a few different ideas, things that we could write about, and you also have a tech startup that you're working on. We can get into in a little bit, but basically we settle on one of the things that you were doing in a way to earn some extra cash was actually walking dogs with these different apps like Wag and Rover, and using that to create like a micro dog walking business, if you will. Maybe you could tell the listeners just really quickly, like, what do you use these apps for? Like, dog walking, I know is just like old school. Like, what were you using them for?
Yeah, so I was, I'm like trying to figure out the timeline here. Middle of last year, I was working on a startup idea, and we were making progress and pushing it along. And as the year was wrapping up, I was kind of moving a bit away from the consulting space and putting more time into that. But that the tech startup wasn't producing any sort of income yet, and I was also sitting in front of a computer the whole day.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to get outside and kind of move around a bit. And so I had heard a couple of friends mention these dog walking apps because I did a bunch of that when I was in like high school and a little bit in college, and essentially like fast forward 5 years where I'm at. Well, I guess it's been a bit longer now, but they have like the Uber and Lyft equivalent of dog walking apps. And so I was like, okay, let's try that out. I'll get outside and make a little bit of money. And I'm just kind of curious about this whole gig economy, sharing economy process. I don't know. I'm just always curious about stuff. So I wanted to try that out, and it kind of made sense for my current situation. And that's how I got onto that.
Yeah, you're a nerd like me.
Yeah, big time.
So what did you discover here? Because I know they're just like, they're supposed to, I guess, post jobs on the app. Like, what were you finding though? Were you able to find like a good strategy to do this, or what did you discover?
Yeah, I think like any app with kind of the chicken and egg problem, which was Uber. I mean, Uber, I'm sure they struggled with it at some point, but because they're kind of the main player, you don't really think about it anymore. But there was a point where they were trying to drum up demand, but didn't necessarily have enough supply, and then they'd have too much supply and not enough demand, and so it's really hard to balance that. And that was kind of the same with the dog walking apps I was seeing. There'd be, they try to reel walkers in and say all this opportunity to walk, and then you would actually get on the platform, and it seemed like only a couple walkers in your area were getting all of the walks. And so I would read around on the websites to see like, okay, how do you get a jump start? It's kind of like Yelp. Like if you're hungry for Mexican food and you look on Yelp real quick and you see a place with 100 reviews and it's a 5-star rating, and then you see another place and it's got 0 or 1, like no one ever goes to the latter. They always go to the one that's popular. And that's kind of the same for any of the ride sharing apps, and it was the same problem for the dog walking ones. And so I, just being naturally curious and liking to solve problems, I was like, okay, how do I kind of I hate to use the word like hack it, but I wanted to figure out how to get ahead of that curve and start getting walks. And then I ultimately figured it out pretty quick. And then I was reading around. I continued to read and see like, why aren't these platforms providing those tips to people on their platform on the supply side? And so then that's kind of where this idea
came from.
We were talking about, yeah, we were pursuing two topics for me to work on this blog, and I was like, well, let's try that because there seems to be a natural market for those tips.
Yeah, it seemed like you had a lot to say too. Like you had a lot to say on the topic, and also being able to go from having no reviews and then growing that a little bit and starting to see that those results of that, I think is really exciting. It almost makes it a lot easier. And you're like, wow, like why can't other people do this? I had this problem. Other people probably also have this problem.
Yeah. It would be it's a major drop off because someone would get onboarded onto the app with all these promises and expectations. And then if you didn't do it right, after 3 or 4 weeks, you'd kind of say, well, screw it. Like, I'm not getting anything on this. I guess in the context of the dog walking, like I'm not getting any walks. So why am I even going to open the app?
Yeah.
And it was just a couple subtle tricks and strategies. And then the floodgates opened, and I write a lot about that in several of my posts.
That's really cool. So first, I want to start talking about like the writing process, because obviously I think that's going to be one of the sticking points, one of the most difficult points. I want to talk a little bit about your experience with writing, and then I want to get into how it is you were able to get your first influx of traffic to the blog. So let's first start talking about the writing. So what was that process like? If you have to write a blog post, how were you doing that? How are you coming up with the content ideas? How then did you decide to write it? Did you sit down in one sitting? Did you spread it out? Would love to hear a bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So in your, you sent over your course, and we had our weekly meetings, and the content of the course was awesome, and it kind of got me a template of how to approach it. And then you had some suggestions, but to start, I listed every topic that I thought I could easily write on. Like some of them just came naturally. It's like, okay, this was something I didn't understand when I was first starting the dog walking app, and then several of those. So I had like a short list, and then even before I had a process, I just wrote. I kind of like, just went at it in no kind of particular process. And then once I had those fleshed out, you and I kind of talked about, okay, pick your top 4, and let's make a plan to get those on a calendar and get them out. And so then I consulted the notes from the course and started writing about it. And I think the two of us went about it slightly differently. You said you're pretty good about sitting down and just knocking out a post kind of from start to finish. Maybe, maybe it's not polished and reviewed, but you do 90% of the content in one sitting. And that's just not how it worked for me. I kind of needed, I'd write like maybe 30 minutes every morning. And with each day that passed, it kind of got to flesh itself out in my head. So when I came back to it the next day, I could, write more and kind of polish a couple things that I had previously written. And at the end of the week, I had something.
That is so interesting. Yeah, because that really also, I think, speaks to our personalities, because I'm like a very like ready, fire, aim kind of person. Like I need to get everything done at once, and I find it a lot easier to do that. Like I'm really bad at like planning and getting a little bit done each day, whereas you're a very strategic, long-term planner, metrics driven. You can, do 30 minutes a day and create that habit and sort of flesh it out over time. So yeah, that definitely speaks to the personalities, I think. But also, the other thing that I think is interesting is a lot of the writing, it seems, is actually just getting it straight in your head first and then getting it onto the page. It's sort of collecting those thoughts accurately in your head, and then when you kind of know what you want to say, it sort of flows a lot easier, if you will.
Yeah, that was the case. And I think that kind of speaks to... it doesn't have to be one way or the other. Like it was simply just putting in the time to write and not necessarily putting in 4 hours straight or 5 hours straight. It was, I did it with 30-minute chunks every day. And at the end of the week, you kind of still have the same result.
Yeah, Very true. The other thing I think too with writing is just having that, like doing a complete brain dump the way that you did it is a really good approach, I think, for beginners, because there's just so much on your mind. It's so hard to organize it. You know, like nowadays I know how to organize it pretty well, but when I was getting started, I just needed to like write and get it all out of my head. And then from that point, I would start to put together, okay, this is what's going to make sense to another human being when I put it into a blog post, you know?
Right.
The other big
I had
thing,
a couple of those for sure.
oh yeah, definitely. I think the other big thing here when it comes to the blog writing is the actual formatting. And that's something that we actually worked on a lot, I think, is the formatting of the post. What can you share with the listeners about what you learned about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely with your guidance, I learned a bunch in terms of like how to do it. And there's how you might think you might communicate something to an audience and how people actually read stuff on the internet. And everyone's kind of got that goldfish mentality where you can lose their attention in half a second. So everything's got to be, it doesn't have to be overly fluffed up. The more colloquial and straightforward, and then short paragraphs. It goes. You talked about it in your book and in the class. It's like you're taught one way through elementary school and on K through 12, but people don't actually read that way. You have to write to what the kind of modern website visitor expects and is willing to invest their time in.
That's so weird though. Like I don't exactly know why we're taught to write that way. I think it's because like for more corporate writing, that's definitely true. Like you're doing like a corporate letter to someone, or if you're doing corporate communication, yeah, you have to have much more like intelligent sounding, very well put together writing. But for like the average persuasion or for doing anything else, it really doesn't make sense what you're taught in school. And that was like me kind of like deprogramming myself and trying to like, put it also into your head that actually what people connect with is more of a genuine voice. And not sounding so, sophisticated and using easy words and having very digestible paragraph. That's actually going to make someone read your writing much more online.
Yeah, if even just looking at the size of the paragraph without even reading it, if that's intimidating, it doesn't matter what's in there. No one's going to read it. They're just going to skip it or leave the page entirely. So yeah, I felt like my 6th grade teacher was kind of just like behind me, screaming that this is just not how you produce it. But as I was looking at it, I was like, okay, that's digestible. That's digestible. You can get what you need out of this. And then they move to the next paragraph and they pick and choose.
Cool.
So that was an interesting shift.
The other thing I think when it comes to writing is the actual headlines. And I think this is a difficult point because I'm very like, okay, what do we need to say to get people to read this, And I think when it comes to like an entry-level blogger or beginner, it's more of like, okay, I want to communicate my voice, or I want to put my voice out there into the world. I'm not really thinking about selling that, or I'm not really thinking about how do we get people actually interested in what I have to say. It's more of like, what I have to say is interesting. People should be reading it, So one of the big things I think we focus on also is the headlines when it came to the article. Right. And I'd love it if you could just share what your thoughts were on that and like how that maybe changed a bit.
Yeah, it's you definitely have to write headlines that capture attention. Again, it's like people only glance at something, maybe a paragraph for a second, and they have to know. I think another thing we either spoke about or I read about from your book or class was that people they don't. I'm at a loss for words right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the difficult things is that if people don't find your headline interesting, informative, or intriguing, then they're not going to read the article.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Which
is crazy because it's not true. You could write an amazing article and just have a really bad headline. Yep. It's like it doesn't make sense to me. But that's just how people are. Like if they see that the headline sucks, they're not going to read through the rest of the article, even if it's like going to make them, thousands of dollars, or it's going to, cure cancer or something, wild like that. I don't know, but it has really valuable information in it. Like they're just not going to read it. I think it's so hard to digest. At least it was for me.
It was. I think you were really good about, because I would kind of think as we were talking it through or reviewing some of my drafts, it was, I kind of felt it went one way, and you're like, well, you really need to like shorten it here or for this headline, you need to really kind of pique their interest, because if it just is, it goes from top down. If they don't do the top part, they're not going to get to the bottom. And then if you go a level down, if the headlines within the article are not written in a certain way, they're not going to go to each of those sections.
Yeah.
So it was counterintuitive to how I would naturally write, but you were very good at coaching me through that and getting something out there that was readable.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about like that first influx of traffic, because I think that's the first stage of seeing that what you're doing actually has appeal. Because like up until that point, pretty much you're writing, you're taking my advice, you're taking what I'm saying, and you're kind of hoping that that's going to lead to readers, or it's going to lead to people reading your work. But it's only once you get that initial influx, it's when it's like, wow, like people actually want to read what I have to say.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so cool. Who would have thought? What was that like? How did that happen? That like initial influx of traffic?
Yeah, it was exciting for sure to see people coming in. The way it worked that you described was, you're going to start something and it takes a period of time for Google and other search engines to pick it up. And you had kind of said like anywhere from 2 to 4 months or 3 to 6 months before kind of Google catches wind of it. And so to offset that at the start, you need to do equal parts writing content and equal parts promoting it and sharing it in various kind of niche communities and groups. And it was kind of like a synergy between the two of those activities would kind of ramp up the latter part of the whole goal is really to get Google to catch it. And so if you can help that process that naturally takes time, the sooner you can get there, and it all kind of builds on itself. So if you look here, I think like April was when I was first getting many of those posts out. So some of those views are probably me reviewing it, but that was actually also the time where I was actively promoting it in various groups, and I was getting, through my efforts, I was getting people to the blog. And then, I think we'll get to it in a little bit while we're talking here, but then I haven't written for a period of time for another reason, but exactly how you described it, Google finally catches what you're producing, and you could see it very incrementally there from kind of June and after, so looking at this, like April to May, I was doing a lot of the work. I was getting some traffic because I was promoting it. And then from June and on, I was not doing any sort of promotion or writing content, but it continued to grow in terms of traffic week over week. And so that was, I've kind of been inactive the last couple months. And despite that, my blog or the readers have grown, which is kind of insane because I'm not doing the work right now. But it's exactly as you described it, which was, it was cool to see like, hey, here's the plan, here's how it's going to work. And then it did exactly how you said.
What was really exciting to me was when you wrote that first article, you notice like when you write an article, it doesn't mean anything. No one actually came and viewed it randomly or something like that. But once we created a promotion strategy behind that article, and actually how to get people's eyeballs on it and how to promote it effectively, then you start to see more and more people. I think you said like one day you logged into the dashboard and there was like 100 people or something that had checked it out. I mean, there's one week in April where you had like 400 plus views just from that week, which is crazy, for a beginner.
Yeah.
And there were people just coming from like Facebook and different sources. And there was like this influx of people discovering your work. And that was just definitely exciting for me as someone who's working with you on the project, knowing that people are saying they love your work, they're checking it out. I just think that's a really cool validation.
Yeah, and even more to the point in terms of like strategy, one, I wrote it and then I promoted it, but the other part is you also had strategies on post types that work. And I believe my
Right.
first post ended up being the most popular post because by design, you said do a versus post. And there were two main competitors in the dog walking app space, much like Uber versus Lyft. And I think it was that article that was one of the first ones I published, had the most views, and continues to be the one that drives the most traffic.
Interesting. Yeah. So after we sort of got that initial boost, I knew that that was not sustainable, because it's not like you can promote an article recurringly in a Facebook group or on LinkedIn, where you can't just keep spamming people with this article. Eventually, it gets old.
Right.
So that's not sustainable. Like, you can write more articles, of course, you can share that with people, but even that's a lot of work to keep doing. So I knew that one of the things that's going to make this sort of if you wanted to turn into more of a long-term thing where you're getting recurring traffic and recurring revenue, is we have to find a way to be able to get traffic to your blog without you working for it and without you paying for it. So for me, just going like in my own history, this happened to me where I was sharing articles with my own blog, CrowdCrux, and I was getting like some traffic here and there, but I would always see it would sort of putter out after a day or two. And I'm like, man, there has to be some other way. So that's really when I started to learn about other ways to get traffic to my own site. And then I had an article start to rank well in search. So, on a Google search engine, people are typing keywords, they're looking for things, how to do things, comparing what's the difference between WAG and Rover and some of these other things. What should I know if I want to start a dog walking business? And they can actually come across your article that you wrote as a blogger and discover it. And Google is doing all of that work for you. So this is a really powerful thing, and I want to ask you about what that was also like, starting to realize that. But for me, also with my work, the same thing happened to me. I'm just now doing it at a larger scale, but I'm doing the exact same stuff that I taught you. So what was it like, being able to see that you hadn't done any work at all, and now people are visiting your blog? Like, you got 40 views on, what was it, like Tuesday? You have people that are just checking it out randomly, like, now.
Yeah, that's cool, because I've had my head down in another project, which is why, the whole thing that you're pushing the whole time is that you just have to be consistent and keep up a writing schedule and get something out consistently. And I had asked you, with me having to shift over to this other project, do you see there being an adverse effect as a result? And you said, well, as long as you pick it back up, we should be okay. But some of those first articles that you wrote, they will start to pick up while you're quiet at this time. And that happened. And it's cool to see what I wrote back in April and May is getting picked up by Google right now. And it just, like, every week there's more weekly visitors. And that's, I don't know, I'm looking at it for this blog, but I'm also looking at it from another kind of content marketing strategy that I want to do for something else. And now that I've kind of seen it work, and just know that part of it is it takes a little bit of time. Part of it's the quality of the content.
Yeah.
It's cool to see that actually works.
The cool thing for me was when I typed into Google WAG versus Rover, and we look, and you're like the fourth result there.
Yeah.
And we started this like literally just a few months ago, and we haven't done anything with it, but now you're there as one of the experts next to dog walking tips and like some of these other sites and Reddit. Like, you're there up there, and you can see how if you kept at this, and if you kept focused and you kept producing content, you would end up going to the top of those search results. And you're not paying for that in any way.
Yeah.
Which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I'm not even the platforms themselves that I'm referring to in that post aren't even ahead of me on the Google result, which that was like so the weird. Whole void I was trying to fill, is like, why aren't these guys putting out the helpful content? Like, there's an opportunity here. So I totally agree. That's exciting.
Yeah. The other thing too is like, I'm very practical when it comes to what can generate revenue and what can't. And I think one of the things that sort of just jars in my mind is that when you create something that's valuable online, and by valuable, I mean getting attention, people are reading it, people find it to be credible, They're willing to click links on it and stuff. Not only can you create in time passive income with that, but you can also then have value to other people. So like you can approach another blogger in the industry and say, hey man, I've been growing this blog. It's been getting regular traffic, not really doing anything with it. But I'm thinking about moving it on to something else. Would you be interested in buying it? And you can earn revenue from that. You can sell the blog. Or you can approach a larger company being like, hey, I have all this educational content. Would you like to make this blog a part of your company? So there are different ways and different like exit strategies, if you will. It doesn't just have to be with, selling ads or making affiliate marketing or something. You could actually sell this asset that you built up to someone else who's maybe keen to becoming an expert in the business. So from that approach, it's like, okay, I've created something. Who else would value that creation,
Yeah, that's exciting. And I think with more time put into this project, we'd start to see some of that. That was definitely a cool part that I liked learning about in the class and talking with you is like, I don't know, I feel like when someone says they make money from blogging, I think it's kind of common knowledge at this point that, oh, okay, they'll just put some ads on their website. But in reality, the value that you get from ad placements has kind of gone down over time. But there were like 10 or 14 different ways that you had shortlisted to produce income from a blog. And maybe I had thought of one or two of them. So it was kind of cool to see like how you could build a business around it rather than just, oh, I'm going to make a blog and put ads on it and I'll get some money from that.
Yeah.
There's tons there. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, it was also like, I use my blog mainly to create leads for things like my coaching business, things like my digital products, send them to, other books that I've written or affiliate marketing. So like, I'm definitely in the game of wanting to build a business and wanting to have a team around me and sort of grow that over time. But other people out there, like maybe you just want to earn like $2,000 a month and live in Thailand, or you want to live somewhere else. And having that recurring traffic and being online allows you to do that. It allows you to separate your location from where you're earning income. And while you can't do it necessarily in 3 months, it is something that you can very easily do if you put your head down, I think, for a year or for 8 months, if you're willing to be diligent about it, So yeah, it's just exciting to me. And man, I've loved to see your growth. It's been really cool. So I would just want to really quickly here, we're getting to the end of the show. I want to ask you about, this new app that you're making, and also where people can, learn a bit more about it.
Yeah. So part of when I came to you and said I wanted to make a blog, and I had two topics, and one was kind of this gig economy dog walking app thing I was playing around with, and then the other was the actual other app in business I was working on, and it's essentially. It's called Dime In, and it was it's like crowdfunding. It's Kickstarter for friend groups, and so it's something that I ran into and still sometimes run into where someone suggests an activity and everyone's like, oh, in the text message, hey, I totally want to do that. Let's do it. And then either at the activity or before we even get to the day of, people just kind of flake out because there's no buy-in. And so you'd kind of just say, hey, this activity is going to cost this much money. We need this many people. And the app could kind of, based on like a varying head count, we have a minimum amount of people we need or a maximum that we can have. And it would kind of apply a lot of what's successful in crowdfunding to kind of a smaller group dynamic. And so I've been working on that. And we were talking about blogging is a strong potential strategy to promote something like that because it doesn't cost money. It just requires time and writing quality content. And we ultimately went with the dog walking one, but now that I've seen firsthand with my own project that the blogging is a viable way to drive traffic to something, I'm kind of thinking of I have stuff going on in the background right now, but I'm kind of reclaiming some time back, and I'm going to ramp it back up with the app. And I'm thinking, hey, maybe I should get going on writing content, and then by the start of the year, or maybe next spring, we're ranking for things and driving traffic regularly to the
Yeah.
website to get potential users.
Definitely. Very cool. Well, if people want to learn more about you, can they like look you up on LinkedIn? Should they go to your website? Like, where can they find out more info about Tom?
About Tom, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tom Beckett. I
I'll also
think I'm
link to your blog, the Dogs Walk Tom blog.
Yep, that works as well. And then dimeinnow.com is where you could find me as well.
Very cool. Well, it's been a pleasure working with you, man. Can't wait to see what's in store. And I think this has also just been a really cool journey for both of us, seeing what you're capable of and seeing sort of the skills that you're making, which are also valuable to other people now. So I really appreciate it, and it's been great to watch your progress.
Yeah, and I appreciate all your help. It was awesome. Cool to see, in a short period of time, we were able to produce some results with this, and it wasn't fluff. And like I said, it's hard to believe people online, and because I knew you, I could trust that you were legit, and exactly as you mapped it out and how you set the expectations, that's how it panned out. So that was cool. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode on the Life of Freedom YouTube channel. One of the things I want to talk about is this idea of belief, because I really don't think that a lot of people believe you can actually start your own blog and that you can turn it into something that's profitable, turn it into a recurring source of traffic, a recurring source of leads, and eventually be able to quit your full-time job and actually go out there and do this full-time. I think it's really difficult to believe that. When you hear about people making 30K, 50K, six figures with blogging, I think most people think that they're really skeptical. I think that we look at these types of individuals and these creative types and these entrepreneurs, and we're like, are you really doing that? Like, are you just putting me on? Because to be honest, like, if anyone could do that and it was easy, why is it that more people aren't doing that? Why aren't more people quitting their day job? Why aren't more people traveling, for gosh sake? Like, it's one of those things where you're almost just scratching your head. And it's like, there has to be something else to this. So I had the same feeling, I had the same thoughts when I was getting started with my blog. And what I want to do for you is I want to share and continue to share with you education, being super transparent, and showing you under the hood what's actually happening behind the scenes when it comes to building an online business. And now I do think that idea of being able to travel and do all these different things, that's really scarce. That's a really, you don't meet people very often in person who are doing that. I mean, actually, if you're to think about it, we've seen actually a surge in this. Like, more and more YouTubers are doing this, more and more podcasters, Instagrammers, bloggers, authors. You're able to earn a recurring source of revenue from your home, and you don't actually have to go into a 9-to-5 office. Think about how amazing it would be to have complete control over your life, and by being your own boss, having an unlimited amount of freedom. That's the whole goal behind me in sharing this information, and also with this channel. Everything that I try to do is to show you how to create more freedom in your life, so you can spend your time as you wish, so you can work on the projects that you want to work on. And if you want to, you can spend the time, the free time that you have traveling the world. You can spend that time at home with your family, providing for them, seeing your kids grow up, really being a part of their life. You can spend that free time in many other ways. You can pick up a hobby, you can do fun stuff. It really is up to you. And it's kind of cool, the control that you have. There are a lot of people in New York City, particularly my friends, who make a lot more money than me. They make a lot of money in the finance profession. They make a lot of money as like high-tech coders and like these different things that are paid really well in New York City, or your doctors, lawyers, just really expensive. But at the same time, one of the downsides, one of the cons to this is that you are literally sacrificing your life. You're spending 80 hours per week in an office making someone else money. And when actually you do that calculation, you're making a lot less per hour than some of the other people out there. You might be being in, at the end of the day, at the end of the year, a good paycheck with your bonus and everything like that. And maybe you can take a week off to go for a vacation. But besides from that, you're pretty much shackled to your desk. You're living a life of constant stress, a life of constant anxiety. And I want to free you from all of that. I want to show you a different path, the same path that I took, where now I have a lot of freedom in my life. If I wanted to, I could travel, I could do all these different things. Right now, I'm deciding to sort of buckle down and continue to grow my business, and I love it. It's something that really is, there's a lot of passion in it for me. So I want to share with you how to do that, and I will include some links down below that will help you get started. And finally, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want more content like this. Again, my name is Sal, and I'll see you next time.